Story 1. Title: The Last Light in the Motel. I'd been on a long road trip across the Midwest, moving between small towns that seemed stuck in time. It was the middle of October, and the nights were starting to get colder and longer. I'd planned on reaching a bigger town before nightfall, but got caught in a heavy storm that turned the highway into a blur of rain and darkness. I wasn't comfortable driving in such bad conditions, so when I saw a sign for a motel just a few miles off the road, I decided to pull over and get a room for the night. The motel looked ancient, its neon sign flickering and buzzing against the stormy backdrop. Vacancy, it said in half-lit letters. There were only a few cars in the lot, all covered in a thin layer of mud from the storm. I parked, grabbed my backpack, and hurried into the small office. Inside, a man who looked to be in his 70s sat behind the counter. He wore thick glasses and a permanent frown. Without much of a greeting, he slid a key across the counter toward me. Room 9, all the way at the end of the lot. The key was an actual old-school brass key, not a card. The room only cost $40 for the night. I was too tired to question anything. Walking across the lot, I noticed that a lot of the windows in the other rooms were completely dark. Only 2 or 3 showed any light at all. When I got to my room, I realized how run down the place really was. The paint was peeling, the doorframe was warped, and the lock barely worked. Still, the room was dry and warm, and I figured it would be fine for one night. I dropped my backpack on the bed and flipped on the TV. Only static. No channels came through. With the storm outside, I didn't expect much anyway. I grabbed a book from my bag and settled in for the night, hoping the storm would pass by morning. It was about 11 p.m. when I first heard it, a soft knocking on the window. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just something blowing against the building in the storm. But the knock came again, slower this time, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. The window was covered by an old, heavy curtain, so I couldn't see out, but whatever it was. They were standing directly outside my room. I got up, walked over to the window silently, and listened. The knocking stopped. I held my breath and reached for the curtain, but something inside me screamed not to pull it back. Instead, I checked the door. It was still locked, the chain slid into place. Trying to calm myself down, I told myself it could have just been some drunk guest knocking on the wrong window. Maybe they realized their mistake and left. I sat back on the bed, heart still racing, but eventually managed to drift off into a shallow sleep. At around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of scratching. Not knocking, scratching. Right at the door. It was slow, methodical, like someone dragging their fingernails or maybe a stick back and forth across the door. I sat up in bed, pulse thundering in my ears. It went on for minutes, maybe longer. Then I heard a voice. It was a whisper, just barely audible through the storm. "Let me in." I almost stopped breathing. I sat there frozen in bed, staring at the door. "Please, it's cold out here." The voice was thin, almost childlike, but something was wrong about it. It sounded like someone pretending to be helpless. The scratching stopped suddenly. Complete silence. I didn't move from the bed for what felt like an hour. Then, from under the door, I saw something slide into the room. It was a piece of paper, soaked and torn. I mustered the courage to get up and pick it up. It was handwritten in smeared ink. "You won't leave." My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone. No service. No Wi-Fi either. Panicking, I decided I couldn't stay in the room any longer. I packed up my stuff as quietly as I could, shoved everything into my backpack, and cracked the door open. The lot was empty and silent. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick and heavy. I sprinted to my car, heart hammering in my chest. Just as I reached it, I heard a loud bang behind me. I looked back. The motel office was the one where the old man sat. Was dark. Completely dark. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and turned the ignition. The engine sputtered once, twice, then roared to life. As I backed out, I caught a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror, a figure standing outside room 9, staring at me, pale, drenched, unmoving. I didn't stop to look longer. I hit the gas and sped down the highway, not looking back. I never found that motel again. When I checked later, no such place existed on the maps, and locals swore there hadn't been a motel on that road in years. But I still have the note, the torn, waterlogged piece of paper, tucked into a drawer at home. Every once in a while, when I can't sleep, I pull it out and read it again. You won't leave. Story 2, title, The Man Who Watched Through the Walls. It started when I moved into the cheapest apartment I could find. I had just gotten a new job in a different city, and money was tight. The place was nothing special, a rundown studio in an old brick building that smelled faintly of mold and dust, but it was cheap, close to work, and available immediately. The landlord, an older woman named Mrs. Calder, seemed nice enough when I signed the lease. She did mention one thing, though, almost as an afterthought. Some nights you might hear noises in the walls. It's just old pipes and settling wood, she said with a wave of her hand. I didn't think much of it. Old buildings make noises. Everyone knows that. The first week was uneventful. I was barely home anyway, between the long hours at work and trying to find my way around the new city. But by the second week, I started to notice things. It was little at first, faint tapping sounds at night, soft creaks when I was sitting perfectly still. Sometimes when I was lying in bed, I could swear I heard whispering coming from behind the walls. I told myself it was just my imagination. Stress, lack of sleep, the usual. Until the night I saw the hole. I had dropped my phone behind the bed. When I moved it to retrieve it, I noticed a small, almost perfectly round hole drilled into the wall, right at floor level. It wasn't part of the construction. It looked fresh, the edges raw and uneven. Curious and a little creeped out, I knelt down and looked into it. It was pitch black on the other side, but just as I was about to pull away, I thought I saw something move, something white. I jerked back, heart racing. That night, I shoved a piece of tissue into the hole and pushed the bed tightly against it. I didn't sleep much. The next day after work, I bought some duct tape and sealed the hole completely. Problem solved, I thought, but things got worse. The tapping grew louder, more deliberate. It wasn't random anymore. It had a rhythm to it, like someone knocking. Tap, 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 tap. Always at night, always coming from the wall where the hole had been. Then came the breathing. I would turn off the lights and lie in bed and hear it. Slow, heavy breathing, just beyond the wall. I tried blasting music through headphones, keeping the TV on all night, anything to drown it out. Nothing worked. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my dresser drawer slamming shut. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked around. The apartment was dark and still. But there, on the wall directly facing my bed, was a new hole. Bigger this time. And around it, in the faint light from the street lamp outside, I saw scratches, long, deep gouges in the paint and plaster, like someone had been digging through from the other side. I froze. I could feel eyes on me. I knew, absolutely knew, that someone was looking through the hole, watching. I didn't move for hours, just sat there, too scared to even breathe loudly. Eventually, as the sun rose and light filled the apartment, I finally gathered the courage to approach the hole. I taped over it again, several layers thick this time. Then I packed a bag and went to stay at a cheap motel across town. I called Mrs. Calder the next day and demanded she let me break the lease. She didn't argue. I understand, she said quietly, almost like she had expected this to happen. Before I left for good, I asked her if anyone had lived in that unit before me. She hesitated. Years ago, there was a man, strange fellow, kept to himself. After a while, people started complaining that they could hear him moving inside the walls. Scraping, tapping, whispering. We found out he had created a network of crawl spaces behind the apartments, watched people, listened to them while they slept. I asked what happened to him. We evicted him, she said, voice trembling. But he never really left. I don't know if she meant that literally. I didn't ask. I moved out the next day. But sometimes late at night, in my new apartment across the city, a place with no shared walls, no neighbors above or below me, I still hear faint tapping. Tap, 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 tap. And sometimes I wake up to find small holes appearing in my walls. Story 3, title, The Mirror Room. They say mirrors are just reflections, but what if they reflect something you can't see? It started with a dare. My friends and I had always been obsessed with exploring abandoned places, old houses, empty hospitals, anything rumored to be haunted. So when we heard about the Hamilton Manor, it was an automatic yes. Hamilton Manor had been abandoned for over 70 years. The story went that the last owner, a wealthy recluse named Evelyn Hamilton, was obsessed with mirrors. She believed mirrors were doorways to other worlds, and that if you placed them just right, you could trap things inside them. Some said she went mad, some said she disappeared. No one really knew. The house was buried deep in the woods, falling apart and forgotten. It took us nearly an hour hiking through dense trees to find it. The first thing we noticed were the mirrors. Hundreds of them, everywhere. Shattered ones on the floor, cracked ones hanging by threads from the walls, tiny ones tucked into corners where they didn't belong. The inside of the house felt wrong, not just spooky, wrong. Like the air itself was heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. Still, we pushed forward, laughing nervously, trying to outdo each other with bravery. That's when we found the mirror room. It was hidden behind a massive rotting door on the second floor. The room inside was perfectly intact and my cuz untouched by time. And it was full of mirrors. Floor to ceiling, lining every wall, all unbroken, all clean somehow. The floor itself was polished black stone, reflecting everything like a dark, endless pool. In the center of the room stood a single wooden chair, facing one of the mirrors. There was something written on the wall above the chair, in faded black paint. "Sit and see." It was supposed to be a joke, a stupid dare. My friend Caleb sat in the chair first. He laughed, flipped off the mirror, said, "Ooh, spooky?" Nothing happened. Then Sarah sat. Then Liam. Finally, they pressured me into sitting. The moment I settled into the chair, everything changed. The room went silent. Not just quiet, completely silent. No creaking wood, no breathing, not even the distant chirp of insects from outside. I looked into the mirror. At first it was just my reflection staring back at me, but then it smiled. I wasn't smiling. My reflection grinned at me, wide and cruel, baring teeth that were too sharp, too many. I tried to move, to scream, but I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped in the chair. Behind my reflection I saw something else. Shapes, figures, pale and twisted, emerging from the darkness behind me in the mirror. Their bodies were wrong, too thin, too long, their faces melting like wax. They reached for me. I could feel their hands, cold, clammy fingers brushing my shoulders, even though nothing was there in the real room. In the mirror they grabbed me, pulled me, dragged me backward. The last thing I saw before the world shattered into darkness was my own reflection, waving goodbye.